You want a 12-foot-tall mermaid statue that spits water for your pool because your HOA banned your pool toys? That's the gist of it, I said. Think grand. Think majestic. Think the most epic HOA-defying mermaid statue the world has ever seen. There was a pause. Then Sarah burst out laughing. You're serious, aren't you? Dead serious, I said. I have a point to make, and a pool to enhance. Mr. Reynolds, she said, you are speaking my language. I love this project, but 12 feet? That quote's ambitious. What kind of material are you thinking? The sun was blazing, the water was sparkling, and I, Mark Reynolds, was living my best life. Picture this. Me, lounging on a giant inflatable pretzel, a frosty beverage in hand, surrounded by a flotilla of colorful pool toys. There was Penelope the flamingo, a majestic, if slightly faded, pink creature. There was Freddy the frog, a grinning green amphibian with an inflatable lily pad. There were assorted noodles, beach balls, and even a floating basketball hoop, because why not? It was a scene of unadulterated summer bliss, in my pool, in my backyard, in Sunhaven Lakes. And then she arrived. She stood at the edge of my patio, her shadow falling across the water like an eclipse of fun. She was the HOA representative, a woman whose expression could curdle milk, and she was not happy. I'm just a regular dude who likes to have fun. Mr. Reynolds? She said, her voice as tight and pinched as her perfectly pressed, beige, of course, pantsuit. That's me, I replied, taking a leisurely sip of my drink. Can I help you, officer? I'm Miss Killjoy from the Sunhaven Lakes Homeowners Association, she announced, as if I hadn't already guessed. And we've received a complaint. Several complaints, actually, regarding your pool toys. My pool toys? I repeated, looking around at my floating menagerie of inflatable creatures. What about them? They quote, excessive, Mr. Reynolds, Miss Killjoy said, her eyes narrowed with disapproval. They quote, unsightly. They quote, distracting. And they're simply not in keeping with the aesthetic standards of Sunhaven Lakes. Distracting? I asked, raising an eyebrow. From what? The meticulously manicured lawns? The rows of identical houses? The soul-crushing beigeness of it all? Miss Killjoy ignored my comment. The HOA strives to maintain a certain tone in this community, Mr. Reynolds, she continued. A tone of serenity, of order, of adult sophistication, and your pool toys are disrupting that tone. They're pool toys, Miss Killjoy, I said, trying and failing to keep the sarcasm out of my voice. They're for fun, in the pool. It's summer, for crying out loud. Fun is not the objective here, Mr. Reynolds, she said, her voice devoid of any warmth. Compliance is, and frankly, your pool area looks like a children's water park. Well, yeah, I said with a shrug. That's kind of the point. It's my pool. I like to have fun. I like to float. Miss Killjoy just stared at me, her expression unchanging. She clearly didn't understand the concept of fun, or floating, or possibly basic human enjoyment. She told me that while there isn't anything specifically in the rules, she was following orders to give me a warning. The HOA meeting. Of course. Because no HOA story is complete without a freaking meeting. It was held in the Sunhaven Lakes community room, a space that seemed to have been deliberately designed to be as bland and uninspiring as possible. Beige walls, beige carpet, beige everything. The board members, a collection of mostly older folks who looked like they'd rather be anywhere else, sat at a long table, looking bored and vaguely annoyed. And then there was her, Brenda Blandings. the president of the Sunhaven Lakes HOA, and the undisputed queen of all things joyless and rule-obsessed. She was an older woman, dressed in a beige, naturally pantsuit that looked like it had been ironed with a freakin' steamroller. Her hair was pulled back in a tight bun, her lips were pressed into a thin line, and her expression radiated an aura of control and a complete and utter lack of appreciation for anything remotely resembling fun. "Mr. Reynolds," Brenda began, her voice as sharp and cold as a winter wind, "your dot pool dot has been brought to our attention." She said pool as if it were a four-letter word. "My pool?" I replied, keeping my voice even. "What about it?" "The Dot Toys, Mr. Reynolds," she said, her lips curling in distaste. "The Dot inflatables, the Dot general Dot childishness of it all." "They're pool toys, Brenda," I said, trying to remain calm. "They're for Dot, you know, Dot playing, in the pool. It's called Dot having a good time." "They're eyesores, Mr. Reynolds," Brenda declared, her voice rising in pitch. "They're childish, they're lowering property values, and they're creating a chaotic atmosphere." "Chaotic atmosphere," I repeated, incredulous. "It's a pool, Brenda. It's supposed to be Dot fun. It's supposed to be a place to relax and enjoy yourself. What do you want, huh? A silent pool? With no Dot splashing? No Dot laughter?" "We want order, Mr. Reynolds," she insisted. "We want conformity. We want Dot tastefulness." "Tastefulness?" I scoffed. "You think a giant inflatable pretzel is tasteless? Lady, you clearly haven't lived." A few nervous chuckles rippled through the room. Brenda's face turned a shade of red that clashed violently with her, presumably HOA approved, beige lipstick. "This isn't a water park, Mr. Reynolds," she continued, ignoring my comment. "This is a residential community. We have standards." She went on to explain they were planning on changing the rules to ban all non-essential pool items. I tried to reason with her. I pointed out that there were no current rules against pool toys, that they were perfectly safe, and that they were confined to my own property. I even suggested that a little bit of fun might actually enhance the community's spirit. The other board members, a collection of mostly middle-aged men and women who looked like they'd rather be anywhere else, shifted uncomfortably in their seats. A few of them, I noticed, were actually smiling at my inflatable pretzel. Perhaps they, too, secretly longed for a little bit of poolside fun. But Brenda, she was unmoved. She was a woman on a mission to eradicate all traces of joy and spontaneity from Sunhaven Lakes. "The pool toys," she declared, slamming her surprisingly small gavel down, "are Dot discouraged, Mr. Reynolds. We expect you to Dot tone it down. For now. Consider this a warning, and we will be revisiting this issue." A warning? For pool toys? It was insane. It was infuriating. It was Dot game on. I walked out of that meeting, my blood boiling, my sense of injustice reaching critical levels. Brenda Blandings had declared war on my pool toys. And I, Mark Reynolds, was not about to surrender. It was time to fight back. But not with words. With with something a hell of a lot bigger than a freaking inflatable flamingo. The official ban arrived with the subtlety of a cannonball to the gut. Another crisp white envelope, another HOA logo, another declaration of war on Dot fun. "The Sunhaven Lakes Homeowners Association," it read, in that same infuriatingly formal font, "has adopted a new amendment to the community bylaws, effective immediately. All non-essential pool accessories, including but not limited to inflatable toys, floating devices, and decorative items, are prohibited within the pool area. Non-essential pool accessories. They were calling my beloved floaties Dot non-essential? Like they were Dot optional extras. Like a pool was just for, I don't know, Dot swimming laps? These people Dot, they had no soul. I, Mark Reynolds, was not about to let them win. I wasn't going to let Brenda Blandings and her band of beige-loving killjoys suck the joy out of my summer. I wasn't going to let them turn my backyard oasis into a sterile, fun-free zone. It was time to fight back. My internal monologue was a glorious mix of outrage, determination, and a growing amusement at the sheer pettiness of it all. Banned pool toys, huh? I muttered to myself, pacing my living room. They think they can just ban fun? They think they can tell me what I can and can't have in my own freaking pool? Oh, they have no idea what's coming. I was gonna find a way. A loophole. A way to have my fun and stick it to the HOA. I wasn't just gonna defy them. I was gonna create them. I was gonna turn this whole thing into a freaking art project. And so I began to meticulously go through the HOA bylaws. I needed a weapon, a legal or at least quasi-legal way to fight back. I started digging, man. HOA bylaws, local ordinances, state laws. I was like a freaking lawyer, only instead of defending a client, I was defending my right to party. And then bingo, I found it. Tucked away in the section on pool regulations and restrictions was a clause about prohibited items. It listed all the usual suspects: inflatable toys, floating devices, non-approved pool chemicals, blah blah blah. But and this was the key, .it said nothing about statues or artistic water features. As long as any decorative elements met the safety and plumbing codes, they were technically allowed. And there was this other, wonderfully vague clause about enhancing the property's aesthetic appeal. Enhancing the aesthetic appeal. Oh, I'd enhance it, all right? I'd enhance it with something so bold, so unexpected, so utterly un-Brenda, that it would make her sensible shoes curl. A slow, evil grin spread across my face. Statues, huh? I muttered. Artistic water features. It was time to get creative. Operation Mermaid Majesty was born. The plan was insane, beautifully, gloriously insane. I wasn't just going to ignore the ban on pool toys, I was going to replace them with something bigger, something bolder, something permanently aquatic. I was going to commission a statue, a massive statue, a freaking mermaid statue. And not just any mermaid statue, this was going to be a statement. A 12-foot-tall goddess of the sea, queen of the freaking pool kind of mermaid. And because why the hell not? She'd also be a fountain. Yeah, you heard me right. A fountain. Spewing water from her mouth. Or maybe a conch shell, or I hadn't worked out all the details yet. But it was going to be epic. I'd argue, with a perfectly straight face, that it wasn't a pool toy. Oh no, it was a permanent artistic water feature, a tribute to aquatic mythology, a sculptural enhancement to my property, and therefore completely exempt from Brenda's freaking ban on non-essential pool accessories. I could already picture Brenda's reaction, the sputtering, the outrage, the sheer unadulterated horror. It was going to be magical. This wasn't just about pool toys anymore. It was about art. It was about freedom. It was about the right to have a giant freaking mermaid spitting water in your backyard if you damn well pleased. Of course, I needed to make sure the city didn't have a problem with my artistic vision. A few calls, a couple of forms, and a surprisingly understanding city inspector later, and I had the green light. Turns out, as long as my water feature met the plumbing and safety codes, I was good to go. Now I needed an artist. Someone who could take my insane vision and turn it into into a 12-foot-tall, water-spouting reality. I found her online. Her name was you guessed it, Sarah. What is it with me and these helpful people named Sarah and Bob? Her website, Sculptures and Such, showcased a portfolio of interesting work, giant garden gnomes, whimsical animal sculptures, and a surprisingly large number of mermaid statues. This was my girl. "So, let me get this straight," Sarah said, after I'd explained my situation over the phone. "You want a 12-foot-tall mermaid statue that spits water for your pool, because your HOA banned your pool toys?" "That's the gist of it," I said. "Think grand. Think majestic. Think the most epic HOA-defying mermaid statue the world has ever seen." There was a pause. Then Sarah burst out laughing. "You're serious, aren't you?" "Dead serious," I said. "I have a point to make, and a pool to enhance." "Mr. Reynolds," she said, "you are speaking my language. I love this project, but 12 feet? That quote's ambitious. What kind of material are you thinking?" "I'm open to suggestions," I said. "Something durable, obviously, something that can withstand the elements, and, something that looks amazing." We talked details. We talked design. I wanted my mermaid to be regal, powerful, but also a little bit mischievous, like she was in on the joke, like she was mocking the HOA right along with me. We decided on fiberglass for its durability and versatility. And we decided on a color scheme that was let's just say it wasn't beige. And so construction or rather sculpting began. Sarah, it turned out, was a freaking genius. She took my vague ideas, my rambling descriptions, my my insanity and turned it into something tangible, something spectacular. She'd send me updates, pictures, videos, and with each update, my excitement grew. The mermaid was taking shape. She was magnificent. She had this long, flowing hair, a powerful tail, and a look in her eyes that said, "Don't mess with me, Brenda Blandings." The neighbors, of course, were curious. They'd see Sarah's truck parked in my driveway, hear the sounds of whatever sounds you make when you're sculpting a giant mermaid and they'd start to ask questions. "What's going on over there, Mark?" they'd ask. "Just a little pool improvement," I'd say, with a mysterious smile. "You'll see." My internal monologue was a constant stream of, "Take that, Brenda," and, "Oh, this is going to be so good," and, "I wonder if I can get her to hold a trident." There was, of course, the inevitable HOA inspection. Miss Killjoy herself showing up with her freaking clipboard and her sour face. "Mr. Reynolds?" she said, looking around my currently mermaidless backyard with suspicion. "We've received reports of construction." "Construction?" I repeated, feigning innocence. "Oh, you mean the water feature? I'm having a fountain installed, a permanent artistic water feature, perfectly compliant with the bylaws, I assure you." "A fountain?" she said, her eyes narrowing. "Yep," I said, nodding. "Just a little something to enhance the property's aesthetic appeal. Add a touch of class." Miss Killjoy looked around, clearly unconvinced. "And where, pray tell, is this fountain?" "It, S. being built, off-site," I said. "It's a custom piece, very D-like cut. It'll be installed soon." She stared at me for a long moment, her lips pressed into a thin line. Then she huffed, made a note on her clipboard and said, "We'll be monitoring the situation, Mr. Reynolds, closely." "Please do," I said with a smile. "I wouldn't want to violate any community standards." She left, looking like she'd just swallowed a whole bag of lemons. And I, Mark Reynolds, was one step closer to unleashing my aquatic masterpiece upon the unsuspecting world of Sunhaven Lakes. The anticipation was freaking killing me, but I knew it was going to be worth it. The arrival of Marina, yes, I named her, was an event that shook Sunhaven Lakes to its very core. 12 feet of sculpted, shimmering, water-spouting mermaid glory. She was majestic. She was dot imposing. She was dot everything Brenda Blandings hated, and she was permanently installed in my backyard. Brenda's arrival was, predictably, less majestic and more dot apoplectic. She stormed onto my property, her sensible shoes click-clacking on the pavement, her face a mask of pure, unadulterated fury. "What?" she shrieked, her voice reaching a decibel level that probably startled dolphins in the actual ocean. "Have you done?" I was lounging by the pool, naturally, admiring Marina, quote, as dot artistic merit. I had a pair of sunglasses perched on my nose and a refreshing beverage in hand. "Morning, Brenda," I said, my voice calm and even, as if having a 12-foot mermaid statue spouting water in your backyard was the most normal thing in the world. Admiring my dot artistic water feature, I see. "Artistic water feature?" she sputtered, pointing a trembling finger at Marina. This is dot, unacceptable. You've turned your pool area into a giant mermaid shrine." "I prefer aquatic art installation, Brenda," I corrected with a shrug. "But hey, shrine works too. Adds a certain dot, mystical dot element, comma, don't you think? I call her Marina. She's quite the conversation starter." "It's a monstrosity, Reynolds," she yelled, her eyes practically bulging out of her head. "It, quote, S. tacky. It, quote, S. garish. It, quote, S. It, quote, S. spitting water." "That's the water feature part, Brenda," I explained patiently. "You know, like a dot fountain, only dot mermaidy dasher. It enhances the property, Brenda, adds value, creates a dot unique dot aquatic ambiance. It's all very dot feng shui." I then proceeded to give her a tour of Marina's features. I pointed out her flowing hair, her powerful tail, her slightly mischievous expression, and, of course, the impressive stream of water arcing from the conch shell she held in her hands. "And, as you can see, Brenda," I added with a perfectly straight face, "she's not a pool toy. She's a permanent installation, a work of art, and therefore completely compliant with the current HOA regulations." Brenda just stood there, speechless, her mouth opening and closing like a well comma, like a fish out of water. The irony, of course, was not lost on me. I quote, I quote, have this thing removed, comma, Reynolds. She finally managed to choke out, her voice hoarse with rage. "You'll see, this isn't over." "Looking forward to it, Brenda," I said, taking a long sip of my drink. "In the meantime, feel free to splash around. Marina doesn't bite. Much." She turned and stormed off, muttering about lawyers, lawsuits, and the imminent decline of Western civilization, leaving me to bask in the glory of my mermaid masterpiece and the very real satisfaction of having thoroughly and completely outsmarted the HOA. The emergency HOA meeting was, as expected, a freaking catastrophe. For Brenda, that is. For me, it was pure entertainment. Karen was losing it. This mermaid," she declared, her voice trembling with outrage, and, I suspect, a healthy dose of existential dread, "is a threat to everything Sunhaven Lakes stands for. It's a safety hazard. It's an eyesore. It, quote, it, quote, attracting attention." This last part was, again, undeniably true. People were driving from all over to see Marina. They voted and tried to change the rules. She'd even brought in an art critic, some guy in a bow tie who looked suspiciously like he'd just been pulled off the street and promised a free sandwich. "This called artistic water feature," he declared with a sniff, "is tacky. It, quote, S. kitsch. It, quote, an insult to the very concept of sculpture." Then it was my turn. "Brenda," I began, addressing the board, who, by this point, looked like they were seriously considering a mass resignation. And her dot expert dot here seemed to be under the impression that I've broken some kind of rule, but I haven't. They had to allow it. I laid it out for him, nice and clear. I cited the previous bylaws, highlighting the fact that there were no restrictions on statues or artistic water features. I presented my permits, my plumbing inspection reports, and even a signed affidavit from Sarah the sculptor, confirming that Marina met all safety and construction codes. And besides, I added with a shrug, she's not hurting anyone. She's just dot sitting there, being dot mermaidy. In fact, I continued, pulling out some photos, she's become something of a dot local attraction. People are taking pictures, kids are loving her. She quotes dot BR, inging joy to the community. The other board members dot, they were a mess. Some of them were still trying to appease Brenda, but their hearts clearly weren't in it. Others looked amused, intrigued, or even dot slightly envious. Then, a woman in the audience, a local art teacher, stood up. "Look," she said, "I'm not gonna lie. This thing dot it quote S out there, but dot it quote S also kinda amazing. It quote S dot bold. It quote S dot creative. It quote dot well comma, it's art. And frankly," she added with a smile, "it's a hell of a lot more interesting than another beige wall." That was the turning point. The board, facing a potential lawsuit, a public relations nightmare, and the undeniable fact that Marina was, technically, legal, voted to dot do nothing. Their attempt to change the rules failed. Brenda's authority? Freaking sunk. Like a dot well comma like a lead weight in a mermaid's pool. The meeting ended with her screaming about the downfall of society, and me walking out with a grin so big it could have swallowed a freaking quote dot inflatable flamingo. But Brenda dot she wasn't done. Oh no, this was personal now. This was dot the Mermaid War. And it was glorious. Brenda tried everything to get rid of Marina. She filed complaints with the city, noise complaints. Apparently the fountain was too loud. Zoning violations. She even claimed Marina was a public nuisance and a threat to wildlife. I'm still not sure what wildlife she was referring to. Maybe the squirrels were intimidated by Marina quote S dot majesty? The city inspectors? They came, they saw, they took selfies with Marina. She tried to get a petition going, went door to door telling people Marina was, I don't know, dot cursed or something. You know how many signatures she got? 3. And 2 of those were from her and her husband. People loved Marina. They were bringing their kids to see her, posing for pictures, even leaving little dot gifts dot at her base, mostly seashells and flowers. But one time someone left a freaking fish. I'm not kidding. She even, I suspect, tried to dot sabotage daughter. One morning I woke up to find Marina covered in dot glitter. Glitter. Like she was trying to make her look dot more ridiculous. Lady, you can't make a 12-foot mermaid statue more ridiculous. It's already peak ridiculousness. I, of course, documented the whole thing on my security cameras and, naturally, posted it online. And me? I just kept dot enhancing dot the experience. I added colored lights. At night, Marina glowed in a rainbow of hues, looking like some kind of dot aquatic dot goddess. I installed a sound system, played ocean sounds, mermaid-themed music, think Under the Sea from The Little Mermaid, even some dot whale songs. Okay, maybe the whale songs were a bit much. I created a photo op area, put up a little sign that read, "Take your picture with Marina." People lined up, man. It was like she was a freaking quote dot celebrity. I even started charging for photos, and because why the hell not, I hosted a Mermaid Majesty party. Invited the whole neighborhood, except Brenda, obviously, put up decorations, seashells, fishnets, inflatable palm trees, and even hired a woman to dress up as a dot well comma as a mermaid. We had food, drinks, music, games. It was a party, man. A party for a statue. It was a freaking quote dot spectacle. A suburban saga of one man, one mermaid, and one very, very angry HOA president. Brenda was losing it. The neighborhood was loving it. And Marina? Marina was just standing there, spitting water and looking fabulous, a 12-foot-tall fiberglass embodiment of my triumph over HOA tyranny. And I, Mark Reynolds, was the freakin' quote, dot king dot of my aquatic kingdom.